Hello, welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. You may have seen an item on the news last week about a fisherman, a lobster fisherman, a diver, who was swallowed, according to news reports, by a humpback whale. His name was Michael Packard, and he suddenly found himself in the mouth of the whale. Now, let me say straight off, he was not swallowed by the whale. There's a difference between holding something in your mouth and swallowing it. And a humpback whale has a very narrow esophagus, so could not actually physically swallow a human being. But nevertheless, this man, Michael Packard, was swallowed by a humpback whale. Now, according to marine biologists, when he found himself inside the mouth of a whale, it would be about the size of a family, think of the inside of a family car, but with all the seats taken out. And also, according to these marine biologists, the whale's tongue is actually very bouncy. So actually being on the tongue of the whale would be like being on a bouncy castle. So this poor diver would have been bouncing around all over the place inside something the size of an interior of a family car. Now what the humpback whale does is it eats lots of small things that are in the water. So it'll basically take a huge mouthful of water filled of little fish and all kinds of stuff like that. And then it contracts its mouth and it rises to the surface as it does so, swallowing all the solids and spitting out all the water. So this poor man, Michael Packard, would have found himself inside the mouth of this whale, and then it's like the walls are closing in on him, because that's what would happen as it sucked its mouth and sucked the solids down. He would have found himself jammed against its throat and the walls closing in on him like they were going to crush him. And then as it reached the surface, it spat him out along with all the water. He was glad about that, and you know what? The whale was probably pretty glad about that, to get rid of this blockage that was blocking its throat and stopping it from swallowing. So some Christians have looked at that and said, well, there you are, it's just like Jonah. It proves that the story of Jonah is true. We don't need any proof that the story of Jonah is true. Jesus said about Jonah being swallowed by a great fish. And by the way, the Bible simply says great fish. Now, there have been some very, very foolish atheists who have tried to say that the Bible doesn't understand the difference between mammals and fish, and that a whale is a mammal, not a fish. But of course, you know, in Hebrew and Greek, there's no different words. It just means a big sea creature. So you need to be really foolish to make an argument out of that. But here's the deal. Jonah was swallowed by a great fish or a whale. Now, there is one whale whose throat would be wide enough to swallow a human being, and that would be a sperm whale. However, the Bible very specifically says that it was a miracle. You know, Jesus said, the sign will be shown to you, which is the sign of Jonah, who was swallowed by the whale for 3 days. And Jesus then actually used that as a parallel to him being in the grave for 3 days. And many Bible scholars believe that Jonah did not survive alive in the fish for 3 days, but he actually died inside the stomach of the whale and then was raised to life again and vomited out by the whale onto the seashore. So there's Jonah. This story about the guy, Michael Packard, the lobster diver in Cape Cod, it doesn't prove the story of Jonah. It doesn't disprove it, but it reminds us of the fact that Jonah was swallowed by either a whale or a great fish, and that it was an absolute miracle. And as Jesus says in Matthew chapter 12, he said the generation he was talking to was a wicked and adulterous generation. He said, and no sign will be given to you except the sign of Jonah. And Jesus was talking, of course, about his own resurrection from the dead. You know, even if people could see somebody swallowed by a whale and then come back to life again, doesn't mean that they would rush to follow Jesus. In the same way that people in Jesus' own generation didn't all rush to believe. Even when he was raised from the dead, many still rejected him. You know, ultimately, when it comes down to it, we have a choice whether to accept Jesus or to reject him. And you can have all the miracles and all the evidence you like in your face, but it's still, people will find reasons and ways for rejecting Jesus. We need to accept him, receive him into our life, let him change our life, and live to his glory. May God help us to live for him today. Praise God. Be blessed today, and join us again next time for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.